Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Net Zero Festival session. Today we're joined by Drayton MD Remi Volpe. Hi, Remi.
Hi there. Good day. Good evening.
We have got Paul Wrighton from Schneider Electric. He's Director of Energy and Sustainability Services. Paul, how are you doing?
Hi, good evening. Yeah, well, thank you. Good to be here.
So we have got the chat boxes here. Please feel free to use that as much as you like. Claire from Drayton is in the chat room, so if you've got any queries and things come up as we talk, Claire can answer those. We've also got an ask a question button just there. If you've got a question that you'd like Remi or Paul to answer directly, that would be the best one for us because we can have a Q&A at the end and it's a lot easier for us to keep track of the ask a question. So we're here today to talk about our sustainability journey from grid to plug. So Remi, as Drayton MD, could you give us a little bit of information about your background and your role currently?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been in the sort of heating industry for over 20 years. I started my career in the UK in the heating industry, and then I sort of moved out of it for about 10 years, and then sort of moved back when I took the role on with Drayton. So I've been in this in the MD role for 2.5 years. Sort of got some good experience, as I've said, in terms of what the heating systems are in the UK, and really sort of was encouraged and engaged to come back into the heating industry because of what I was seeing with Schneider and what I was seeing with Drayton. I knew Drayton from the past, and I just sort of thought, you know, that combination of Drayton with a heating experience and Schneider, who'd acquired Drayton, was a pretty strong combination. So glad to be back, glad to bring my knowledge and experience from working in other industries and in other parts of the world to really try and sort of move forward in terms of what's changing in the UK heating industry and the fact that, you know, we're in a big transition. So hopefully some of that experience can be, you know, I can bring that to bear here.
Yeah, it's a really as we've done this Net Zero Festival, it's a really interesting time for the heating industry. And obviously the Schneider kind of background is the electric, and with Drayton you've got the heating bit. So Paul, can you give us a bit of your background as well, please?
Yeah, super. Thank you. So firstly, good to be with everyone today. Good to share with you. So yeah, Paul Wrighton for Schneider Electric. I work with the Energy and Sustainability Services team. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But I actually started life in the domestic and small commercial space as a building services engineer, and then moved into the more commercial industrial space, kind of designing heating ventilation systems and into the project management side of things, and then diversified really into using those same skills that applied at the domestic and the commercial level into the kind of the larger scale all around an energy and sustainability focused agenda really.
So yeah. Remi, what are we going to be talking about today?
So I think this the element we wanted to do was you know, net carbon zero, and you know, the sort of move away from gas in the heating has absolutely been dominating the sort of headlines for the last few months now. And you know, I think what I wanted to do was explain a little bit around how we're thinking about that. You know, a conventional traditional controls company who have been in the UK for 70 years. You know, how are we making that move and that transition? But it's also interesting to sort of say, you know, those changes are playing into a bigger ecosystem as well. It's not just about what's being and going on in the home, which is where maybe as you know, as the plumbing or the heating industry we generally focus. This net carbon zero journey is going to impact what's happening outside of the home as well. You know, and how we are sort of generating electricity and things of that nature. So you know, we want to try and start at that big level and explain that how electricity is being generated is going through a major transition, and that's what sort of Schneider's involved in. And then we want to drill it down though to say this is not just a nice PowerPoint presentation about, you know, things in 20 or 30 years time. It's about changes we're making now, and the sort of thinking we're bringing into our architecture and our products that we can start to implement in the home today and really start that journey into a net carbon zero. So it's not the big company, we'll talk about that, but we'll drill it down and say, what does it mean for a heating controls company in the UK that manufactures in the UK and that has a long history here? That's the sort of aim.
And then, of course, like you said, there's products available now that heating engineers can fit now, rather than thinking, oh, 2025, 2030, things that we can do physically now that you could come into my house and do tomorrow that could really have an impact on net zero, low carbon, and the environment.
Exactly. Absolutely. We've already started, and we were thinking about this journey already. I think that, what it's done is it's meant many more people are now starting to sort of sit up and pay a little bit more attention. So it's not something new for us. And I think today, what we want to do is sort of explain a little bit about, what it can mean for the installers, and how we can help get some clarity maybe and bring some realism to it in terms of activities and actions we can start today.
Paul, we're also going to hear more about Schneider Electric's commitments and plans to meet net zero by 2025, which is going to be an interesting one for the UK and for you guys as a business. So could you talk a little bit about that for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Remi said, we want to kind of take this in two angles. One, kind of give an overview and a flavour as to what we as Schneider Electric see both in the market and what that does for us as an organisation, and also give the kind of the messaging is very clear. We as Schneider Electric are very proud to say that everything we do is around this energy management space, whether it's in the electrical field, whether it's in the heating field, and really how we support customers, organisations, and installers to really drive and support their own customers in this whole arena. So we'll talk a little bit about the market and what we see as a market overview. But again, we'll just give some examples of the fact that we as Schneider Electric, we have all these great solutions and products, but we also eat our own food. We believe in what we're committed to, and we're very committed as a business to ensure that we as an organisation operate in a sustainable manner as well.
And just sort of building up on Paul's comments as well, the business that I run in the UK, we do have a factory here, and the commitments we've signed up as a facility, just as all the other Schneider factories have done, is where we've committed to be net carbon zero by 2025 as a manufacturing site. So as Paul said, we want to walk the talk. We want to not just sort of talk about the benefits our products can bring. We want to also demonstrate and sign up and show that we're walking that journey ourselves, and our facilities, our factories, our offices are going to be net carbon zero, pretty quickly in quite an aggressive time frame.
Yeah, should we kick off with energy saving today that we can do to future proof? So we've been talking a lot during the Net Zero Festival about what's going to come next. So is it going to be hydrogen boilers? Is it going to be heat pumps? But there's lots of stuff that we can do to get ready for whatever the next kind of fuel or the next emitter is. So what kind of products, Remi, does Drayton have on offer to kind of help homeowners, help installers start preparing for this net zero by 2025 target?
So I would sort of look at this sort of at the base level. We do a range of products that can improve the overall efficiency of today's heating systems. So if you look at your gas boiler, the aspect of adding TRVs, of adding sort of time switches, more sort of accurate thermostats and things of that nature, sort of starts or takes one particular small step forward today. And that's our conventional products, our conventional controls. We've got smarts in there as well, things that will optimize the start, that will sort of provide time and temperature control. And we've been doing that for a long period of time. So just installing those off a base system takes one step forward. The next level is to start to put more smartness around that and moving maybe more into a smart home or a connected type of system. We launched Wiser Heat, which is our offer in terms of now trying to sort of manage the whole heating in your home. So Wiser Heat in itself uses and builds on our core products. So we have millions of the LP time switch that's installed in a multitude of homes out there. We designed a system so you can take that off. You can put our Wiser Heat hub on there. 99% of the time, there's minimal changes that needs to happen to the wiring. So it's very much a DIY. And then you can take your manual radiator valves off and fit our ITRVs, our intelligent radiator valves on there. And then you've got a smart heating system. What it provides, which is a little bit different to a pure smart thermostat. Under a smart thermostat, you're pretty much trying to control the whole home through one particular area, one thermostat that may have some smarts on it, but essentially you're controlling it as one building. Here, with the intelligent radiator valves, each room can have its own time and temperature profile. So you're not constrained to switching everything on and off at the same time. Your bedrooms can be switching on at different times and temperature profiles to your living room, to your kitchen, to to your bathrooms. So that, as soon as people start doing that and start to sort of modify or tailor how they're heating each individual room, be it based upon their living conditions, then you can start to sort of bring the overall cost down in terms of heating your own home. And our sort of data that we have sort of shows that people can save, around 20 to 25% of their fuel costs by moving over to a wiser heat system and controlling the rooms on an individual basis. Now, we've also got some nice smarts in there. So we have things like eco setting, and the eco will automatically decide when to sort of turn your heating on or to turn your heating off, but still maintain the set point that you want to have in the room. So there's a lot of sort of smarts that we've built into the system to help the user ultimately, minimize what they're spending to heat their home comfortably.
Yeah. So what we keep hearing about is we're on target, or we've hit the first, is it 2 carbon budgets, and is it the third one that we're probably going to struggle? So there's going to be some intrusive stuff for both industry and for consumers. So what people want, what consumers want, is the same kind of, they want to be warm, they want the same service that they kind of get and that they expect, but they want it, or we want it, in a much more smarter way. So with these controls, it's managing the system in the background, isn't it? So consumers don't have to worry. They're used to the thermostat, they're used to radiators, they're used to radiator valves, and all of this is going on in the background, and they don't have to concentrate on it. They don't have to program things. They can if they want, if they're interested in it. So what that sort of smart technology, do you think that's really going to pick up for importance for our carbon targets?
I absolutely do. Yes, I think that the more smarts that go in there can really sort of help, help individual consumers leverage and sort of build on knowledge that we've built up over that 70 years. So things like the lifestyle patterns, things like the influence on outside air temperature, how that impacts your home, they can sort of be done automatically or behind the scenes, if you want, through using the smarts that are out there. So we've got weather forecasting apps that can be interfaced in with the heating control. So we know if the outside temperature is going to suddenly drop down to a lower temperature, that we need to be aware of that. The controls can learn about that and adapt the sort of overall settings for the home, because ultimately the homeowner doesn't want to be looking at forecasts and don't want to be sort of constantly changing things. So if we can take that base information from them, we can use that information using our AI or our machine learning and our sort of application knowledge, leverage that with information from some smart apps that are available. Then I think we can sort of take a lot of the hassle out of it and create a comfortable environment, an efficient environment for the homeowner.
Yeah. Can I just jump in as well at that point? So I think, and firstly, I hope you can all hear me okay. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Hopefully that's not coming through the line. But I think, you're absolutely right. And just to comment on the drivers, I think from a high level perspective, what we know more than ever is that the challenge we face from a climate perspective affects us all, and we've all got to do something about it. And it's not necessarily just going to come from large consuming sites. It's going to come from your everyday individual also managing their energy better, smarter. But then if we take that down and we realize that actually, I look at even my own patterns, living and breathing this space daily, it's very easy to start off with the best intentions and then things drift. And actually what we're seeing is, the way to really address the challenge is through smart technology, because what that does is, you can start with the best intentions, deploy the technology, and then the technology takes over, and the technology starts to really then drive that consistency of change over time, which is very often very lax with the human side, because, when as humans, we kind of drift in and out sometimes, and, we alter things, and we make it feel more, cool one day and hotter the next, and that can change our patterns of behavior. So I think Remi's absolutely right. The products and the solutions that we do They help us, really. We as individuals have a responsibility to also act in this time to address climate change and address the impacts of global warming and all that sort of stuff. And we're really only going to do that by leveraging the technology that's really readily available to us now.
Yeah, Remi, you mentioned as well, what as a manufacturer, kind of Drayton and Schneider doing to kind of reduce carbon emissions and to, like you said, to kind of set the standard that you'd like everyone to follow?
So I think on two particular, I think if we talk a little bit around, what we're doing as a manufacturer or as a citizen, if you want, as a citizen here in the UK, how are we sort of helping deliver those sort of net carbon zero targets that the government now have mandated? So, as with a number of elements, if you don't start measuring, if you don't know what your sort of current picture is, then it's very difficult to then build a plan in terms of saying, right, how are we going to get down to zero? How big or how small is this particular problem? So, it's important that we measure pretty much, all aspects related to our carbon footprint so that we can say, right, this is our starting point. This is where we are here. And we've done that over the last couple of years. So since 2018, we've been starting to measure a number of aspects. And I think there's a slide around this, but we sort of look and say, right, our current sort of footprint tells us that we're consuming X tons of CO2, and this sort of is to heat the factory. You see it in the top left. This is how we use electricity, how we use gas, essentially to heat the sort of factory and the offices that we've got. But we also touch on some other interesting elements. We look at the cars that we're sort of using. So any company cars that we have for our business are included in that particular figure. And then we've got a few other bits and pieces. We also include things like single-use plastics as well into our measurements. So we've started by measuring it, and we can then now set really some targets and some steps to say, right, from our current position, we need to make sure that we're drastically reducing what we're doing for electricity, which is pretty much used to drive the production lines that we've got, the gas, which is here to, as I say, to sort of heat the building that we've got, but also the fleet and other elements that are used, to sort of service and sell and support the products that we put into the marketplace. And we drill that down, and we then equate it to a figure per employee as well. And this is something that we post and that we make available to all our employees, so that they hold us accountable to ensure that we're moving forward at the right pace to hit that carbon neutral position in 2025. So because we have a plan in place, sometimes things sort of move and change around that. But I'm confident that the plan we've got in place is absolutely setting us up to be carbon neutral by 2025, and that we'll make the appropriate investments. It will sort of tackle the issues and challenges that we've got coming along, because as a business, we really are committed to being, to walk the talk and to be able to hold our heads up and say, yes, we've made ourselves, our organization in the UK, fully carbon neutral.
But we were just talking before about Schneider Electric and how what a big company that is. I imagine it's the same kind of thing that Remi was just talking about on the Schneider side.
Yeah, absolutely, and to be clear, that it cascades down through all the businesses that are part of the Schneider Electric family, whether it's Drayton, whether it's some of our others as well. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think as a company, we're incredibly proud of the fact that we live and breathe it. We live and breathe it through our products, we live and breathe it through our commitments, and our commitments are very they are aggressive, and they continue to be so. So we've signed up to something called science-based targets, which is that the idea of 1.5 degrees global warming and the commitment around that. And as the data changes, and if data and science tells us we need to be more aggressive, then we'll be more aggressive. And so as an organisation, we look and we monitor, to Remi's point, very, very closely across all our businesses in the UK, but also globally. So this is really key to us, and our CEO is very, very prominent in terms of the bodies that he sits on, the kind of the counsel that he gives and his feedback that he gives in this space to really drive this issue of climate change that we're all impacted by and we all have to address.
Yeah, so talk to me about home energy management. What does that phrase mean to you guys?
So I think from my perspective, I think this really is the sort of home of the the future. And we see that in a net carbon zero world, there's going to be no gas that's ultimately no gas that's going to be used. It's going to be more of an electrical home. And as soon as we start to sort of move and switch over to electrical devices as a sort of medium, it's much easier to sort of understand and to manage the use and the consumption of electricity. So for us, this is really around saying, there's going to be a multitude of devices that are going to need to be powered in the home that conform to a net carbon zero architecture. So what does that mean? That means from this particular picture, we've already got electrical appliances that we know are in the home. So your TVs, your fridges, freezers, washing machines, etc. So they're already getting some smarts in there, so we can measure and see what level of electricity those are using. Our metering is also being rolled out. So if you look at the rollout of smart meters, that now consumers are able to start to visualize and see in terms of what are they using for their current sort of utility bills. So the smart meters have been rolled out more and more. We know they'll be pretty much in everybody's home by 2024. The changes then start to impact how people heat the homes in the UK. So we've mentioned a move away from gas, and a move into more of electrical forms of heating. And at the moment, we're seeing a lot of publicity and interest shown in heat pumps, which can also sort of lend itself to that particular way. And then in addition to that, we know outside of the home, but also linked to the house, the growth of electric cars. So, we think next year is going to be sort of quite a watershed year. The number of electric cars that are available on the market, more and more manufacturers are bringing models out. We know that there's tax incentives to also move over to electrical cars. So that's only going to grow as well.
The government has set some pretty ambitious targets for everything, but especially for EVs. So that's a very good point, because pretty soon that's going to become a reality very quickly.
It is. No, it is. And I think the sort of, the final part then is I think the growing of solar as a source for people to generate electricity locally. And that aspect of being able to generate electricity local is going to be super critical in the future, because we're just not going to be able to provide all the demand and all the electricity that we need in the future. So what will then be required is the sort of situation of a house you've got there isn't that far away. It's predominantly being driven by electricity, but all these systems, all these different elements need to really collaborate. They need to work. They need to coexist in one particular system and in one particular way. That then says, right, when is it optimum for me to charge the car, so that in the morning, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, I've got sufficient charge to take me to work. When do I need to utilize my sort of, washing machine or things of that nature? Can I sort of vary when I switch that on and off, so I can sort of manage not only what I'm using and consuming, but also what I'm paying as well. Likewise with heating, and ultimately what we want to have with home energy management is an architecture, a system by which we're making smart decisions when to use what sort of elements of electricity. But we also want to, I think the sort of next stage is to also leverage and use things like demand side, time of use tariff. So we're seeing electricity companies change what they're charging for the electricity based upon the time of day. So how can we make sure that we're making the most of that, and how do we then sort of start to control those devices so that we're doing more where we can when the electricity is cheaper, that we're consuming and using what we generate with our solar panels when it's available. If it's not able to be used, then can we store it and use it later in the day? But ultimately make all these systems coexist and make it sort of simple for the consumer, that rather than have to run 4 or 5 different sort of control systems or apps, can we do it in one, or can we do it with two that operate seamlessly? So that I think is the challenge, and it's one that, you know, I think we feel we've got a path to sort of deliver it.
Yeah, Paul, how does it fit in from a Schneider point of view? Because a lot of these products that we're looking at are obviously already part of your repertoire. Is that the right word for it?
Yeah, we'll go with repertoire. I like it.
Repertoire, I like that, yeah.
Word for a Thursday evening, so we'll go with that. But no, absolutely, I think you know, Schneider Electric, you know, and Remi touched on it there. I mean, you know, we're getting into some of the future and how we see things going. And, you know, and if we don't have to look back very far to recognize that actually we had a fairly unsmart, I'm going to use unsmart, it's not the best English, but an unsmart grid system, you know, where you generate, you know, centrally, you distribute through a network channel, you consume locally. And I think what we're seeing now through this kind of proliferation of smart technology, both on the grid and behind the meter, or either domestic or commercial level, is that actually that dynamic is shifting, and the interplay and interface between the two is changing. And I think that's both really useful. You know, if we're talking about how do we monitor and address energy efficiency and the interplay that we locally have with how we get our energy, then, you know, it's huge to know what happens in the dynamics of the home or the dynamics of the site and how it plays on the grid. But I think the other exciting thing that we at Schneider Electric see is that it actually opens a whole new world of opportunity for installers, for companies in this industry to really serve their customers better, to help them. You know, we recognise that, you know, we're talking quite advanced technologies here, and we recognise that actually as a UK we have a fairly ageing population that still need a lot of help with some of the older technology that we've got. So I think there's a huge piece here that, you know, with Schneider Electric, we're committed to, both in the product, but also in helping, you know, the installers and the contractors out there to actually deliver the service wraparounds to these kind of offers that mean that, you know, we get the traction across, you know, the home space, and it actually works, you know, because I'm sure we've all had experience with technology where you buy something, plug it in, and then you turn it off, right? And that's not what we want. What we want is we want to leverage the benefit of these new technologies, both in the way that they control our homes, but also in the opportunities that present themselves in the future. And, you know, Remi touched on it there. I think, you know, it's really important, but, you know, there's a lot of research going in at the government level now around how the interplay between local houses and local communities and the local grid will really start to shape the future. And talking around things like, you know, buying and selling electricity, even between a home, between a local community. You know, the whole ecosystem is changing, and it's changing really fast. And I think Schneider Electric, we're perfectly positioned, both from a large-scale grid side piece, but also incredibly well positioned at the local level to really support through both electrical and the wet systems, smart wet devices, etc. Yeah.
And all of these technologies that we're talking about, because we're talking about the home of the future here, but the home of the near future. But all of these technologies are available now, aren't they? So installers could start looking at ways to add this to their business portfolio. They can start getting trained on these right now.
Absolutely, yes, they can. I think what we're sort of trying to focus on at this moment in time, I would say have they been optimized to work together, you know, and has consideration been given in terms of how you move from one to the other. You know, at the minute, I think most of the developments have been in isolation, if you want. You know, what we're trying to do here and where we're spending, you know, a lot of our time is to simplify, or to try to simplify and make it much easier for these systems to work together, and to sort of have some level of consistency. So how you go about setting, you know, I don't know, say your lights or things of that nature is the same way in which how you'd sort of set your heating up, or there's some similarity to that. And if you then want to sort of work and interface with your electric car, there's a similarity around how you go about it. So that's where we're spending a lot of time in trying to look at this from a consumer standpoint, to say, you know, how do we take the complexity out, and how do we make it as simple as possible? Because that's been the secret to the success of people like, you know, Apple, or, you know, look at the Android element. Very sort of complex, bringing together these different sort of ways of doing it, but simplifying it through an app. and then putting a sort of a design language or a common way in which you do it. So the technology to do this is, I would say we've already started down this path. Our Wiser Heat gives us the ability to now add on other parts. I think where we want to make it, where we want to really sort of focus our efforts in the next sort of 6 to 12 months is that simplicity. How the hell does an installer start to bring these systems together? And if I'm used to fitting a gas boiler and now you're telling me there's no gas boilers, then how the hell am I going to play a part in sort of like understanding and helping to sort of selling to the consumer how we can move away from their traditional gas heating, but what are some of the benefits you can have by the alternatives, and how can you make it as simple as possible for them to understand and then ultimately have installed.
Yeah, Paul, so we're talking about the kind of home of the future, smart home. What about smart cities? If we take this kind of up a notch, like you kind of mentioned, villages potentially like buying or communities buying and selling and making their own energy, which we kind of see on the continent more with things like district heating. How do we, and this isn't one for the installers, but this is kind of big picture stuff, smart cities, how do we go about that? Because that, to me, working on a mainly domestic and light commercial magazine is like...
Yeah. No, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's huge, right? That's a massive challenge. And, there are so many complex interfaces that exist within that. What I would say is there are already initiatives in play that are really looking to address this. It's a huge challenge. And I can think of one, the Bristol City Loop, for example, which is a very widely published out there piece of research, but where they're looking as Bristol City Council to really address this interplay, both domestic, commercial, and education. And how do we create this ecosystem where everything talks and communicates, and we optimize at the smart city scale? So, it's hugely complex. We're absolutely in that space and supporting it too. I think the beauty of the fact that technology advancements are accelerating still helps, because it's through technology that we're going to achieve it. I think if you look back 20 years at what we were able to do, and then project it now, it's light years. And then I think if you forward project another 2 or 3 years, I think so a lot of the stuff we're talking about now around the grid interfaces and interplay at domestic level, these will start to be more commonplace, right? And actually they'll become normal, and we'll be talking about the next thing to further optimize. And I think that acceleration is only going to continue. And I think with acceleration, there's a lot of, in terms of the technology, there's a lot of other advancements, as things accelerate and as we become more efficient at making these technological advancements, the prices can become cheaper. So therefore the adoption is better. We look at solar panels 15 years ago, to install the same volume of solar panels today, you're a fraction of the cost, so that's happening more and more. So as we're getting smarter, we're also getting cheaper. We're able to then start to get this technology out there to everyone, whereas before it's only been the select few, right? And I think that is a big challenge that has needed to be addressed. And I think going forward, we'll start to see that more and more. And I think there's a lot of innovation that needs to still come, to be honest, in that space to support homeowners, to support developers, to support communities and cities. But I see it's definitely coming, and it's definitely awareness there in the market.
I think just one other comment I'd make on that to sort of Paul's viewpoint. There isn't one solution to this. I think there isn't a one-stop shop for this. The sort of smart city and the house of the future really has to come together with strong collaboration and alliances from companies thinking of that bigger picture and saying we need to be part of an ecosystem, that ultimately allows that that simplicity, that interoperability to work. And certainly my view and I know sort of Schneider's view as well is that this is not about you have to come and get everything from Schneider. I think we bring a lot of expertise and capability, but we need to collaborate with other players, and we have been collaborating with other players. We need to sort of share technologies. We need to agree on sort of technology platforms that we all can design to. And I think I'm seeing a change in that as well. Historically, in the past, people did think with the blinkers and say, well, what does it mean for me, and how can I sort of maximize the revenue that I've got?
A bit of interest, yeah.
I think that's got to change, because no one party can bring this all to the market. Yeah, this has got to be a concerted effort, and we're working with heat pump manufacturers to really sort of understand their capabilities, what they're sort of what they have at the minute, what they don't have. We're working with EV charging organizations as well to sort of likewise sort of say, hey, if we wanted to sort of bring this in, then how does an EV charger work, and what sort of protocol do they use, and how can we sort of share information amongst ourselves? We're working with the smart meter companies as well to sort of say, well, what data is available and how often is that data there? We're working with solar companies and things of that nature. So I think the sort of key word for this has got to be around collaboration. It's about creating an ecosystem, and companies really sort of as I say, making that commitment to sustainability and making that commitment to say, what, we can't do this by ourselves, but we need to work together, and ultimately we're all going to be winners if we do that. But that's a change in mindset that I think we're at the early stages of doing, but may be the sort of additional coverage we've had about a green recovery, and the fact that I think socially we're all sort of much more aware of having to play our part in that. Attitudes can start to sort of change at the high levels as well.
Yeah, I mean, even in the last couple of weeks, we've had the Committee on Climate Change report. We've had the Chancellor committing a pot as part of the recovery plan for this. The CCC report was a lot about COVID and green recovery. And the carbon targets are legally binding as well. So you can't just go and kind of do what you want, because we have to, as a country, hit these. Like, we have to. There will be repercussions if we don't. Paul, what do you think about that kind of, not like a holistic approach between organizations, between trade bodies, between manufacturer groups?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's Remi made a really important point there, and when we talk about the technology, we're talking about technology collaborating together, and actually we talk bigger picture. It's about us as individuals, us as organizations, us as interfacing with governments, local and national. It's we've all got to have this interface, and we've all got to be brought into this, right? No one organization, no one government necessarily independent of everything else is going to solve this. We were all committed, and we've all got to play our part, even if we think it's really small. We have to do it. And I think it's something that I'm I have the privilege of working for an organisation that's passionate in the same space of sustainability as I am, which is great. But I think my message whenever I have the opportunity to speak to people is we have to play our part now. And we have to think about this broader than just me and my organisation, but how do we work together ultimately for what we all need to see happen, which is this very imminent issue that's upon us now of climate change. It takes us to all act and work together and collaborate, and that's companies, it's government, it's industry bodies, and it's individuals. It's the whole spectrum. Yeah.
I think one other point, sort of, Joe, to make on that for me as well is that we also know that in the UK we're not working from a blank piece of paper, which is most unfortunate, because the probability of executing from a blank piece of paper by 2050 would be very high. We know that.
No, if anything helps with new build, it would be great. If we could just start again from scratch with all the no buildings anymore.
Exactly right. And I think I've heard various numbers mentioned, but we've got 25 million plus homes. We build around 200 to 250,000 a year. The new build, I think, is well on a path to delivering this, because pretty much building regs are going this particular way. And you've got that blank canvas that you can create. So I think the new build, I don't necessarily worry too much about the new build. We'll get there. It's the existing business, houses that we've got, and we know that the level of insulation in a lot of those is, terrible at best. I'll be polite. So just putting controls in there without sort of trying to tackle that challenge as well is going to be, needs to be done. So I've recently been talking to a number of other organizations as well who, you know, have developed models where they sort of go in and try and almost fit T-causes onto some weird and wonderful ways in terms of trying to, you know, overcome insulation issues and problems, as well as just, you know, changing the heat source. So, you know, I think the conversation is starting down that path. I think, you know, the first way to fix a problem is to admit you've got a problem, I guess, isn't it? And I think we all agree, you know, how do we tackle that housing stock that we've got is you know, needs to be addressed and tackled. And that again isn't a single manufacturer source. We've got ideas, I think we've got views, I think we've got a lot of expertise and a real passion to find a solution. You know, and I think we need to also play our part in maybe leading other organizations to the table by sort of, you know, being a little bit more vocal into the government as well, and playing our part as a, you know, as a major manufacturer in the UK to say, you know, I think we've got to try and tackle some of these other elements as well as, you know, addressing what we've said, you know, in terms of the new build. As well as that, you know, how can we and what are the other ways in which we can do it? Because you know, ultimately, as you've said, the technology is there, and we've got a sort of a compelling way to get there. But there's a few things we need to maybe, as an industry, start to tackle on, you know, as a group of manufacturers to say, let's get our hands around this.
Yeah, so we've got some questions that have come in, guys. This is your opportunity to ask Remi and Paul any questions. We've got a couple in which we'll go through now. I've got a couple as well that I'd like to know the answer to. If you do have a question, now's the time. Please drop it in the chat, or there's an ask a question box, which you can see a couple have already come in, which is great. So yeah, we'll ask. I'll paraphrase these because some of them maybe are quite opinionated. But Mark, the gas man, said, very good point. We have been here before. When I first joined the industry, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we were talking about if installers aren't fitting heat pumps in 5 years, they won't be fitting anything. 5 years later, not a lot has changed. So how can we ensure there's not a false start? And how can installers ensure that A, there's not a false start for them, getting their businesses prepared for a boom that might not happen? And B, how can they make sure that as small businesses, they're not kind of edged out by larger companies and corporations?
So I think what's different this time, you know, I think the fact that the sort of targets to be net carbon zero have been written into law. So, you know, there is a mandated policy now that we have to move away from fossil fuel. So I think that's a big element, you know, and as an industry, you know, if there's new laws, if there's new regulation that mandates things, then the market does start to sort of move. So I think that's one big important step forward in doing things different. So rather than just a suggestion or a recommendation, you know, to get out of our normal habits, we need to sort of have a reason for that. So I think that's one important step on that side. And next, I think it's the element of saying, well, you know, what are the solutions there? So I think that's still evolving and developing. There isn't a silver bullet to say there's one solution here that can replace gas boilers. Yeah. So there's an aspect of, do we use hydrogen? Do we move fully over to heat pumps? Do we consider, you know, electrical boilers or radiant panels in the homes? And I think that, you know, there's varying levels of maturity on technologies there, and at the minute there's more questions than there is answers. So I think we've got to engage with each of those options and try and sort of drive to some answers to saying, you know, if you want to go down this path, then this is a way in which this solution can help sort of replace a gas boiler. And it's you know, in some instances it's quite considerable, in others it isn't. But there's still too many questions as an industry on that. I think we've got to work to answer some of those questions with the new suppliers, with the new sources, whether it's heat pump manufacturers, you know, whether it's electrical boiler manufacturers or radiant panel people, whether it's ground source heat pumps as opposed to air source heat pumps, and start to sort of put some guides, I think, put some guides out to the industry to say, hey, you know, this is how you can move away from gas and use this as an alternative. These are the pluses and these are the minuses. These are the things to sort of consider, and this is how we can help you reskill or retrain. So, I think get it trying to sort of tackle it in that way, so that the installers, who ultimately are the way in which we're going to have to implement this change, feel that their voice is being heard, feel that they've got a way in which they can have the questions answered, and ultimately get retrained as well.
Paul, what were your thoughts on that as well? Because again, like all the things that Remi's just mentioned, we've got these products, and installers are going to be very interested in, like you said, adding strings to bows. So what's your kind of thoughts on this? Maybe like we had a false start with a couple of these 5 years ago. Oh, Paul's on mute. Live technology. Remi, we'll come back to you. Paul, if you'd like to refresh again, that will probably free it up. But another one that's coming here that we haven't mentioned is off-grid properties and rural properties. So things where we talk about smart and we talk about internet, where the internet access might not be that great, or whether the grid itself might not be that great in kind of these cottages, or at the end of a road where your nearest neighbour is a mile away. How does this kind of system fit for those people?
So I think whilst is he back? So maybe, do you want me to quickly answer that and then come back to Paul, or do you want to?
Yeah, please, if you could. But we'll talk about, Paul, off-grid properties where kind of internet signal might not be that great, or the grid itself might not be that great, and your kind of nearest neighbour's quite far away, and we're talking about a lot of electricity. So Remi was just going to touch on that, and then we'll throw back to you.
Super.
So I think the items off the grid, you don't need to always have internet for these particular systems to work. They will, and we need to ensure that they will work without access to the internet. I think the experience is enriched if you do have access to the internet, because then you can pull in various other bits of information and data. But essentially, we've got to make sure that the systems we put in aren't reliant on that internet link. That will change, and I think the rollout, albeit it's sort of been a topic in the headlines recently, the rollout of 5G, obviously will happen. May happen a bit later than what we expected. So I think the reliability of the internet will get better in the future, but today it's still intermittent. So we've got to have whatever we put forward needs to work locally. It hasn't got to rely on the cloud. I think the next part is that we've got to make sure that self-generation is something that can be done as well. And at the moment, we can have some use of solar. I think it's a little bit hit and miss, and we also know some applications can't have solar panels fitted on there. So I think the sort of ground source heat pump as another example, or air source heat pumps are ways in which are alternatives there, but they're not perfect. But can we make that sort of technology either come down in cost, because the cost at the minute is quite prohibitive in a number of cases, or can we make it sort of along with the combination of better insulation and things of that nature, can we make it a more viable solution than what it is today? So we have to find a solution, and I think it's got to be as I've said, a combination of tackling some of the installation, some of the cost barriers, as well as some of the technology sides. But it's doable. I think it's doable.
Paul, what were your thoughts on that?
So firstly, apologies. I seem to be perfectly demonstrating the challenges with the internet and speaker systems. That wasn't planned, just to put that out there. But no, I think if I go back to the first question, I think it's all around. The challenge is still big, and how do we prevent not repeat what's happened in the past? But I think we are seeing much more larger organisations committed, which I think to this point it comes from government, but it also comes from corporations as well having to drive it. I think that's going to be a key, and that's why I think it will be more sustained this time than we've ever seen it in the past. So I think to answer that one, and just repeat the other question.
Is about in off-grid properties, rural properties, where internet might be intermittent, or like Remi touched on, the grid might not be. These are going to be the biggest challenges for heating. Also, when you start to about like listed buildings as well, where do you kind of see technologies, and how do we kind of address those properties? Maybe first, or maybe last. Is that the hardest?
Well, it's a great question. I think it is. It's undoubtedly a challenge. I think and again, it comes back to technological advancements, especially in retrofitting to older properties. We have to overcome the price point of doing it in the retrofit space, the ease of doing it, and making sure that it's integrated. Again, we also we want to address climate change, but we also have to acknowledge that some people buy old properties because they like the look of old properties and don't necessarily want a dirty great big TV or sensor or whatever. So there's innovations that still need to come into place as well, and it is a challenge. But I think as technology advancement continue and as price point continues to be driven down, I think we'll see support in that space as well.
I do think, I do think, in the scale of priorities, though, we've got to tackle, the biggest population that's there, and off-grid is a large part. I don't want to sort of underplay that, but I think sort of if we could tackle and make some big inroads into the way in which we heat our sort of homes and apartments on the grid, as it were, at the minute, that's really going to drive economies of scale that will then, to me, sort of wash down and help the solutions for those other elements where, at the minute, I think cost is a big barrier, and insulation needs to be sort of tackled as well. So let's get the majority of the cases right, and I think as we get more economies of scale by tackling that, I think these outliers can be done in a more cost-effective and smart way as well.
It is interesting because the CCC report is tackling, or one of the headline grabbers is the oil, isn't it? And like stopping oil for whichever date, I can't remember. But yeah, so it seems like they're kind of looking at that as an easy one because there are less off-grid properties. So it might be but I think personally, I think it would be more of a challenge. So I agree with you guys that you kind of tackle the bulk of it and then you start finding those solutions. So finally, the impact that this is going to have on installers and their businesses, how can these, like as a heating engineer, like Mark, the gas man who's watching this now, how can he stay ahead of the game? How can he get training for these sort of things? How can he keep up to date on regulations and all that sort of stuff? What are you guys doing as Schneider and Drayton to support these people?
So there's I would say a couple of things on our side. I think the first one is we're actively working, through industry bodies. So we're an active member at groups like BEMA, for example, where we're trying to provide material and collateral to help installers understand the current picture. So I would ask that you certainly keep feeding into forums like this, that you feed into Claire and what we have through our 9-degree network programs, the questions that you're sort of saying, hey, we still need some answers to these, because through BEMA as an industry, we need to sort of be aware of what they are and tackle those particular issues, which is putting training courses together, putting guides together, putting sort of overviews in terms of a how-to type of thing. So we're trying to tackle it through the industry group, so that again, these topics can be served by a number of manufacturers and other players. And then I think secondly, it's really around what we're trying to do through our own partner programs as well, and making sure that we're understanding and listening to what the installers are saying, that we're giving them a path to do some additional training or to get some better understanding in terms of how the products that they're getting trained on can not only be used today, but this is sort of how we're future-proofing it for the future. So the element in terms of what we're doing with Wiser Heat, which can be installed today, which is essentially a water-based system, we're going to make that platform also able to manage and control what we're showing here. So we can sort of start people to say, well, if you know that technology, if you're comfortable with that technology and how you sort of go about setting things up, we will, if you want, evolve that Wiser Heat platform to be able to do other things, like we'll add EV charging to it, we'll add heat pump capability to it. And as we do that, I think we just need to educate our 9-degree network of installers and people who sort of use our products, help them along that journey of learning, and make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, Paul, what were your thoughts as well? Because we saw with our readership, when there was a kind of solar boom, that a lot of heating engineers and plumbers as well, plumbing engineers, kind of adopted that sort of technology. So when you're looking at things like EV charging and smart tech as an installer, it could be like very good thing to put on your on your website and offer to your customers. So what are your thoughts about this kind of upskilling and getting prepared?
Yeah, I think, and again, just apologies on the poor connection, but yeah, I think it's absolutely essential. I mean, there is, the task at hand to get the UK ready in this sense is so vast. It needs everyone, right? So it needs the local installers. It needs everyone. And I think that, I made the point earlier around this emerging trend really adding opportunities. Okay, there are opportunities for really diversified, and I think that's the exciting thing. Whether it be EV charge points, whether it be solar or heat pumps, there's broader opportunities that are coming, and I think those that are looking for ways in which they can differentiate themselves, even at the local kind of installer level, I think there's going to be huge opportunities.
And I would sort of say, this is going to happen. This is going to move, essentially because the sort of government has mandated it now. And I think if people start to move into this way early, the early adopters, can really sort of take a little bit of a steal and become the real sort of, leaders in this particular marketplace. So, I think that's what we're trying to do as well, and sort of say, we need installers to get on this particular journey with us. Let us help you along that particular journey, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So let's get on this together. Let's sort of learn from each other, and certainly sort of start to move forward in understanding the technology and what this system means in the future.
No, I think you're both right. I think it's a very, very exciting time for everyone involved in the industry. Claire has put the 9 Degree Network in the chat, but Remi, I'll just throw to you to finish. How can installers, you've mentioned the 9 Degree Network, you've mentioned the Facebook page as well, I think. How can installers kind of learn more or get more information from Drayton and Schneider to kind of help them along with this?
I would say, use those particular channels there. We're trying to become more digital, so we've got the Facebook group as well. And we're finding that is a fantastic forum by which we can do some training. We can put some topics forward onto there that then, it just builds and grows. So I would say, please, come onto that sort of forum as Facebook. Tell us what you want us to talk about, again, and our 9 Degree Network and our Facebook group. We'll talk about anything that the installers sort of are seeing. I think the sort of lockdown has sort of driven us into starting to rethink a little bit how we do things, posting more videos, but ultimately we want to talk about topics and subjects that are of interest to the installers. So let us know what they are through those particular 2 digital channels that we've got, and we're more than happy to take those topics and try and explain them in a little more detail.
Perfect. Thank you both very much for joining us. Thank you everyone who joined us. Thanks very much, Mark the Solar Man, for all the questions as well. Thank you very much, guys, for your time. Cheers.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.